Hello, Lana. I hope you are doing well. Welcome to a lesson in history and government, that is in Form 2. We are learning about the social organization, the economic organization, and the political organization of the African societies. In our previous lessons, we started learning about the Baganda Kingdom, the socio-political and economic organization of the Uganda. So in the previous lesson, we looked at the social organization of the Baganda, and I mentioned that Kabaka was the center. He was the center of the organization of the society. Everything revolved around the Kabaka, and we said the Kabaka was the king. He was the head of the society. We also said that the society was divided into classes. How many classes did the Baganda Kingdom have, my dear Lana, from our last lesson? Very good. It had 4 classes. The highest was the ruling or the royal class, and then after that we had the chiefs, right? And we are going to look at who are these chiefs. And then the third one were the Bakopi, or the peasants. And then the last class, or the lowest class, were the Badu, who are the slaves. We also learned that they had a traditional religion. What was the name of the traditional religion, my dear Lana, of the Baganda? Yes, the Lubale. Very good. That was the traditional religion. And they also believed in the existence of a supernatural God, or a divine power. What was the name of their God? Katonda. Very good. And then they also had other gods and spirits who are worshipped through mediums. We also mentioned that we also learned that they lived, or they practiced, polygamy. That is the activity of having more than one wife, and this was to encourage unity, or to strengthen the social relations among the people. And in that spirit, Kabaka married from each and every clan in the kingdom to make sure that he united, or he had caught the attention, or he had caught the allegiance of each and every clan, because no clan would revolt against the Kabaka having their own daughter married to the Kabaka. So that was a way of bringing the people. We also said they also believed in life after death. And then towards the end, we said there was introduction of Islam, and also the introduction of Christianity. Now, my dear Lana, in our today's lesson, we are going to learn about the political organization. The political organization. A political organization of the Baganda. And remember, we are talking about the 19th century. So, how were they politically organized? When you talk of political, it involves governance, the way authority was disseminated, or the way control was exercised over the people. That is political. You learned that in your Form 1 when you looked at the introduction to history. So when you talk about political organization, is the way of exerting authority on other people. So how are the Baganda people organized in their political system? So the first point that we are going to mention is they had a centralized system of government. They had what, my dear learner? A centralized system of government. When we talk of a when we talk of a centralized system of government, they had a center of power. The centralized system of government, they had an overall leader who took control of every affair of the kingdom. So the centralized system of government was based on, it was headed by, the government was headed by Kabaka. Let me use a different colored pen so that you could get the name correctly. Kabaka, whom in other words we can refer to as the king. Kabaka was the king of the kingdom. He was the king of the kingdom. So Kabaka was the center. He took control of everything. He was the leader, the overall leader. He was the head of the community. So everything was centralized on him. And the Kabaka's position was hereditary. His position was hereditary. He had the position was the Kabaka's position. Kabaka's position was hereditary. What does that mean? Hereditary. The eldest son. In case Kabaka was to vacate the office or was to die, which was the case at then, the only time Kabaka would cease to be the leader is when he has died. So the eldest son, the first son, would take control or would take the reins after the father. So what were the duties of Kabaka? What were the duties of Kabaka? Number one, he was the head of the traditional religion. Everything to do with religion was centered on him, as we learned in our previous lesson, the social organization. He was the nerve center. He was the center of worship. So he was the one who directed. He had to preside over the major religious activities of the community. That is one. He led or he directed. He was the head of every traditional religion. And then number two, he was the final court of appeal. I have to look at that. The duties. Let me use a different color. Duties of Kabaka. Duties of Kabaka. I've mentioned he was the head. He was the head of religion. And then he was the final court of appeal. So, as you lead, or if in case you have a conflict with each other, you would go to the lowest level, who are the chiefs. If you are unable to, or you are not satisfied, the final place you could appeal, or the person who could make the final decision or a final determination, was Kabaka. That's why we refer to him as the final court of appeal. If anybody in the kingdom was unsatisfied in how matters were being ran, he would go to Kabaka, who would make a final determination. If you are not satisfied with what Kabaka said, there would be no any other kind of avenue or where you could have any other place of being solved, or that matter you are having to be solved, because Kabaka made the final determination. The other one was he was the commander of the army. He was the commander in chief, like what we we refer to our country today, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Actually, he was the commander. That should be an A. The commander-in-chief of the army. He would direct, he would lead, right? He would make sure that the armies are well organized. And then he also appointed, transferred, and dismissed chiefs. So the chiefs were appointed by the Kabaka. He had to transfer them, one from one position to the other, or in case they were disloyal, he was the one who dismissed the chiefs. And then he controlled trade. Control of trade. That was the other duty of Kabaka. He controlled the trade. And then he was the trustee. He was the trustee of the land. He was the trustee of the land. So every land in the kingdom of Baganda was owned by Kabaka. That is what means by the trustee. Every land in that kingdom was the property, or was owned, or it was entrusted to Kabaka. So that means he was the one to apportion land to whomever he pleased. So especially during to the chiefs, those chiefs who were loyal to him were given land to make sure that they were in line. But we are going to mention that in a moment. So these are some of the duties of Kabaka. So apart from who instituted Kabaka, after let's say for example Kabaka, the father has died, who would institute him into the office?